So this is the reason why I decided to make the videos in this way, because we're going to come up with problems. If you watched the last video, kind of left on a little bit of a cliffhanger that said basically as this thing loads, it's going to automatically mark the message as read. So if you were to click the mark on read button, then immediately when it refreshes the page, it's going to remark the thing as read. So how would we solve that? So it's been about 3 minutes since I made the last video. So what if we were to do this instead? What if instead of redirecting them back to messages, we redirected them to the same page, message.php, and then we'll put ID equals, and then because we're in PHP, we're going to concatenate on here just the ID. We could put message ID, but we're already getting ID from up here. So now what we could do is do this. We can put an ampersand here, or well, we put a dot and a quote, and we could put an ampersand, and then I could put unread equals 1. Okay, so check this out. So what's going to happen now is we're still going to have that loop in there, but you're going to see that there's something else going on here. So when I go to this page and I click on this, if I mark it as unread, then what's going to happen is this is still listed as read because it did that thing where it automatically loaded the page. But it also, when I click this button, it added this unread equals 1. So now what we can do is come up into here and say unread equals input get unread. Okay, so what we're doing is we're saying look in the URL bar or look in the post and for something called unread. And so we're posting that or getting that right up in here. So now what I can do is, check this out, we can add a little bit more logic, and instead of just saying if message is read, so we can wrap this whole statement in another if statement. So we can, I'm going to tab this over, and I can do if unread not equals 1, then do this. So in other words, if unread, which is this variable here, so we'll go ahead and do this. So d&d unread, I don't want to do that. Basically what's going to happen is it's going to go in the URL bar, and if unread exists, it's going to call it 1 basically, because that's what we passed in the URL bar. If it doesn't, it'll just be null. So it's always, unread is always going to exist. It's just a matter of will it be 1, and the only way it should be 1 is if we set that from the URL. If we set that here, unread equals 1. So basically, if unread is not equal to 1, you know, if we didn't do something special here, then mark it as read. But in all other circumstances, then mark the thing as unread. So check this out. So now what's going to happen is we're going to refresh the page, and I'm going to just mark this as unread again. Now when we come back to our messages, it's still unread. So I come in here, I mark it unread. I have not been redirected away from my message. All I did was marked it as unread, and now when I come back here, it's still unread. But if I were to just load the message up normally, let's come back here. So right now I have 2 messages because I loaded it normally. I'm going to mark this one as unread again, and I'm good. I've got 3 unread messages. But if I come in here and mark it as unread, then, so the one thing it didn't do is change this count, and I don't really know why. We can play with that. But if I were to come here, oh, because I still have 3 unread. So let's see here. That should, I feel like this should be showing me 2 messages, but the problem is that this is happening after this is happening. So right now that's a little bit of a bug that technically if I were to click this there would only be 2 messages. It just doesn't know that until I get to, because this is higher up in the code than this, and if you know anything about PHP, it's going to render it in order. But I think that's still a lot better. I think it's a lot better that basically you can mark a message as unread and you'll get the 3 update. Maybe what we'll do is we'll just make a thing to mark as read. So let's do that real quick. We have 5 minutes. So let's come in here again and let's do something different. Let's make this button dynamic. All right, you ready for this? So we have this column here going on, and this gives us an opportunity. So I'm just going to space this out just so it's all, I like to use the auto spacing. So lines, auto indent. So, okay, that's all nice and pretty like it should be. But what we're going to do is we're going to come in here and we're going to say, if you notice here, we can see if the message is read or unread by going to that column. So let's see here. If message read equals 0, do this. If not, then do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to steal this line of code right here. So if the message is, where are we at? All right. Let's open up some PHP. So if message read equals 0, which means the message is unread, then do something. Okay? And we're going to wrap this in PHP. And I'm going to close my PHP here. So if the message is read, do something. If it is unread, we want it to do something different. So we're going to do else, and then we're going to close another set of PHP tags down here. So you'll see what we're doing in a second. So let's see. So we can just close that. All right. So now, maybe we don't even want else. We'll look at this. So if it's unread, then maybe we want it to generate a different form. So if the message is unread, then maybe we want a button to mark as read. So let's check this out. So let's say mark, we're going to go back into our mark read and mark as read. Okay, so let me pause for a second. If it sees that the message, oh, I'm getting a bunch of notifications. If it sees that the message is read or is unread, then we want the ability to mark it as read. And so what we're going to do is we're going to put in a different class to make that button green. So we're going to say button success. So, and then if it is not 0, then we want the option to do what we were doing before, which I should have just left it alone. But then we want the ability to run this code. So we're going to go back and do danger, mark unread, and then mark as unread. So we're going to walk through this in a second. So if the message is unread, then show me a green button, and if I click that green button, then have a mark read, like post mark read. If it is not unread, then give me the option to make it read. So we're going to come up here to this, and we're going to just copy this. And so if it receives post from mark read, then update it to where the message is 1. And then we don't actually need any of this because this should be the default language right here. So, alright, so one more time. If it sees the button that says mark read or mark unread, then change it to 0. If it sees mark read, change it to 1. So hopefully my logic is right, and you'll see what we just did there. So if I refresh this page, so we're okay. So we're missing something, but we can mark it as read or unread. We're just missing some logic down here. So let's take a look. So this should only show up. Oh, the form's in here 3 times. That's why. Let's delete this. This is our first form. You guys saw that, I'm sure. So if I were to come in here and refresh the page, you'll see that now the message is unread, and I can mark it as read, and there'll be 2. And if it is unread, then I can mark it, or if it is read, then I can mark it as unread. And so basically I can come back and forth, and I'm going to have 3, 2, 3, 2, 3, 2. And so we've just kind of created a dynamic button that allows us to mark a message as read and unread. So I hope that makes sense. If you're done, you can stop the video, but just to show you one more time. So in the database, every time the page loads, it's going to see, is this a 1 or a 0? If it's a 0, the message hasn't been read. If it's a 1, then the message has been read. And so what we're giving the opportunity to do is, if the message is unread, you can mark it as read. If it is not unread, which means the message has been read, then you can mark it as unread. So that's a way to create a dynamic button without using any JavaScript or anything like that. It's pretty much instantaneous. It is refreshing the page, but you can click it a bunch of times, and we changed the colors of the button to like let you know that there's something different going on. And anyway, hope that helps.